How's it going, everyone? Wayne the Unknown here, and welcome to another episode of Geeking Out, where we basically discuss everything pertaining to the geek and nerd community. Tonight, we are doing something very special, a new segment called Get to Know That Actor, and tonight's featured special guest is David Fielding, who you may know as Zordon of Zoltar from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good. Again, thank you for coming on and being my first guest actor for this podcast series that I've been doing for a while now.
Wow, okay.
So
That's
yeah.
cool.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely is. So basically, this podcast will be getting to know you, the kind of stuff you've done over the years, what got you into acting and stuff like that. So, to begin, how long have you been acting for?
I acted pretty much from like high school through my mid to late 30s. I really haven't done any sort of acting in the last 15 years or so. I did some community theater stuff, but I haven't really considered myself an actor for a while. I mean, it's part of who I am and what I had a great passion for when I was younger. But so yeah, I mean, I acted for a good 25 years, something like that.
That's a really long time. What made you want to get into acting?
What made me wanted to get into acting was having a great love of comic books and TV when I was growing up. And from a very early age, I was acting out stuff that I was reading or seeing on the television. My father was in the Air Force, and one of the presents he brought home for myself and my brother and sister was a mangled parachute from one of the Air Force training exercises.
Nice.
It had a big rip in it or whatever, but I would set that up as a curtain, and then I would force my parents to watch me act out my favorite scenes from comic books.
Nice little makeshift backdrop.
Yeah, pretty much. So I mean, I was always drawn to performance on that. I got very shy, like after the age of 10 or 11, up until about the age of 16 or so. And in junior high, I had joined the drama class, but dropped out and didn't get back into it until high school.
Mind sharing some of your inspirations and what got you into acting?
As I got older, I was really drawn to the idea of being in the movies. And so I started to do a lot of research and a lot of just digging into what it would take to actually be in the movies. What does it take? What do you have to do that? And so then I would start to watch and try to mimic or imitate people that were very popular on screen at the time that I was growing up. So I went back and watched a lot of old movies. So I was a big fan of Marlon Brando. I was a big fan of
Good actor.
Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Christopher Walken. So those were the kind of people that I was growing up with. Films like The Deer Hunter and Taxi Driver and just a bunch of good stuff like that. So I mean, and then I got into stage acting, and stage acting is a very different animal than film acting. So I was trained at first on the stage, but had these aspirations to want to go into film and TV. So, but yeah, those are kind of my inspirations for that.
Nice. So how long were you a stage actor for before you got onto doing like acting for TV shows and everything?
Too long, actually. I mean, if I think about it, I mean, I was in school from 1982 to 1992. So I was in school for about 10 years. I got a BFA in acting from Southwest Texas State University, and then I got a MFA in acting from the University of Pittsburgh. So by the time I went out to Los Angeles, I was really too old. or at least what
Their standards were for acting at the
right. I
time.
mean, if you really want to get noticed in the film industry, you have to be out there very early. I think, like in your early 20s, because those are the years when you're very vibrant. You have a lot of energy. You can take a lot more of the BS. Because there is going to be a lot of thankless things you have to do in order to move up the career ladder to get to the point where you start to get auditions for and opportunities for really good roles. Now, of course, there are exceptions to those rules. I mean, you're always going to find somebody who either has a very powerful or wealthy benefactor who can open doors for them. And I think that's also something that's very important and overlooked in a lot of discussions about what it takes to make it in the industry is if you talk to any sort of famous actor or famous celebrity, they all have a story about somebody who behind the scenes was opening doors for them, working on their behalf, knocking on doors and saying, you need to pay attention to this person or give this person a shot or whatever. And those are one of the things that if you're classically trained as a stage actor, unless you're attending Juilliard or you're going to the actor studio in New York, those opportunities are not offered to you. You are basically, you're taught the basics of the craft about how to create a character, how to memorize your lines, all the different stagecraft that you need to do in order to truthfully create a performance that will elicit responses from the audience. But they don't really teach you about what you need to do to survive as a working actor. They basically give you all the tools that you need once you're on stage, but how you get the job, how you support yourself as an actor, what sort of taxes do you need to sort of like look at? Do you need to file yearly, quarterly, all that kind of stuff? I mean, all of the support and networking tools that you need to have, I didn't really learn until I got outside of school. So while I don't regret any of my time at school because I did some really great work and I met some really fantastic people and we did some amazing shows together and I enjoyed all of that. But after that 10-year period of going to school and learning all those things, I was very unprepared about what it would take to actually make it in the industry.
I imagine there was like a lot of trial and error, sink or swim moments for you back then.
Like I said, I also went out there rather late. So, for instance, when I got cast as Zordon, I was 29, and I turned 30 before the show actually went on the air. So at that point in time, my personality, my worldview was very firm. I had a very good understanding about who I was and what lines I would and would not cross in order to, quote unquote, be successful. And I learned very quickly that if I wanted to be truly successful in that industry, that I would have to change fundamental parts of myself that I was not comfortable with. And so after a year and a half of living in Los Angeles and experiencing what it was like in the city, seeing what that city did to other people, the people that I met, the people that I hung out with, the stories that I heard, I came to a really clear understanding that that I was not willing to change for that. I did not want to sacrifice my integrity for this this brass ring that so many other people had been chasing, And again, had I gone out there when I was 21 or 22, those 10 years that I had spent in school would have been 10 years streetwise education, learning the ins and outs of what it was like to be on a set, who to talk to, who not to talk to, um, all of the things that I was never taught in school, but I would have learned on the job, as it were. So yeah.
Now, coming to that question about your role as Zordon, how did you come about getting the role for such an iconic character that almost everyone knows of, or has at least heard of?
Well, I mean, I have to thank my stage education for that, because when I was at Southwest Texas State University, I had a great many friends there in the theater department, and we did a great many shows together, and went to parties and stuff together. And when I went to the University of Pittsburgh to get my MFA, a lot of those people had made the transition to move out to Los Angeles. So 3 years later, when I had finished the MA program and moved out to Los Angeles, I already had a support group of friends already out there, so I could talk to them about what they had been doing over the last 3 years. And one of those friends was a very nice and a talented production person named Stacy Fish. She's directed things in her career, and but at the time that she was out there, she was working as a production assistant for Saban Entertainment on a number of their straight-to-video movies that they were doing.
Oh man, I'm familiar with that name.
Yeah. So she was actually working as, I think, second assistant director on this pilot for this kids TV show that they were gonna create, called, at the time it was called Dino Rangers. And I had just been in Los Angeles about 2 months. I had moved there in August. I got a phone call in early October saying, "Do you want to come down and audition for this show?" And it was Stacy, and I said, "Well, sure, I'd love to. That's why I'm here." And she said, "Well, if you can come down to the building this afternoon, that would be great." And so I went down there thinking it was going to be a cattle call, that there would be 1,500 other guys. I'd go in, I'd do my minute or two, and then I'd go home and I'd never hear anything, because that's basically what you're educated about. This is how the process works. That and at that time I had steeled myself for the fact that I was going to have to pound the pavement for a year or two before I got like a speaking part in a, I was fully expecting to do a lot of extra work where I would just show up and be in the background and be part of a crowd or whatever. But I was very surprised when I went down to the building that afternoon that it was just myself and another guy. And they said, "We're going to cast it tonight. Are you available to film next week?" And, of course I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'm available. Yeah." And I understood right away that this was unusual, that this was an opportunity that doesn't come along.
Basically, it was like your big break, in a sense.
In a way, yeah. I mean, it was a very quick and down and dirty introduction to things don't always work the way that you think they work. And so luckily, because of my extensive stage training, because of my 10 years of preparing myself for a moment like this, it didn't freak me out. I didn't get nervous. I didn't get cold sweats or anything like that. I thought, well, this is what I've trained for. This is what I'm supposed to do.
Basically second nature.
Yeah, yeah. And so I told myself, look, make the most of this, because you may not get an opportunity like this again. I had been on a number of the auditions before this out in Los Angeles, including one for a TV show that was about 6 friends, 3 guys and 3 girls, which at the time I didn't realize was going to end up being Ross, Rachel, and all those guys living, at Central Park over there. But this was different than that. This was very sort of semi-professional in hindsight. I mean, it seemed rather rushed, but I took that as a opportunity to try to do my best with what I had, which was basically just my physicality, my voice, and my interpretation of the lines that they were given to me. So yeah.
So I've actually looked like on your Instagram that you went through like a makeup process. What was the makeup process? I was just like looking at all that white and blue and everything. That could not have been a comfortable.
It's not as bad as you think it is, because they only filmed the character one time, and again, this was a really harsh introduction to the realities of what it takes to make a TV show or a film. Because after the audition, and I was lucky enough to get cast, the following week I was told where to show up, and when I arrived at the warehouse in Studio City, which didn't look anything like a movie set or a TV production studio. Again, it looked very sort of cheap and on the fly. But again, you have to understand that movie and TV production is very expensive. If they can get away with doing something on the cheap, they will.
Right.
And that is sort of the history of Saban with Power Rangers, because they were notoriously cheap about what they could get away with and what they couldn't get away with. So
whatever saves money, right?
yeah, exactly. So when I showed up at the call time and signed in and went into the makeup room, I was told that they were going to shave all of my hair off. And was I okay with that? And at this point, I had already signed the contract. I had already agreed to do this. So I was okay with that because I knew my hair was going to grow back. Or at least it did at the time. Now it's not going to grow back. But my girlfriend at the time was very upset when she found out that I had been shaved bald. But they shaved all my hair off. They glued my ears back. They darkened my eyebrows.
Wait, glued your ears back?
Yeah. They glued my ears back. So I mean, they were pressed up against the side of my head. And then they slathered the front of my chest and my neck with green paint. So I had green latex paint from my shoulders all the way across my neck, down about halfway across my chest. And then they took me into the warehouse space where they had set up the lights and the cameras. And there was a big green screen, and they sat me down in what was basically like a barber's chair, towel across me. And all I saw were just the bright lights shining in me. And I could see the silhouettes of the director. And most of the cast was far enough away from me because this was, as I found out later on, this was like the last thing they were filming for the pilot. And they were all ill. They had come down with some mild flu, and the director was all sniffles and coughing. And the original cast were there because we traded lines back and forth, because we basically did all of the dialogue from the first episode, Day of the Dumpster, when Zordon is introduced to them and he grants them the power coins and the morphers and all that stuff. And we did a number of takes of that, and during setups when they would adjust the lights and people would, go get drinks or whatever, and they would come in and touch up the latex paint because the lights would dry it out and crack and fall off. So that was basically the makeup process for Zordon. And then I never had to do it again because they never filmed the character again, which I found out later on, because after we got filmed, people, the director announced that this was my first professional job in the industry in the city. Got a big round of applause from everybody. And then I went to work. I had a job after that. I worked nights at it was some company that showed midnight movies. They did it was like a 24-hour satellite movie company that people paid for back at the time. And I basically monitored the movie streams to make sure that nothing, didn't go off when it didn't go off. So I did that, and then I worked 8 hours at that shift and went home in the morning. And basically, they were saying, well, we'll call you when the show gets picked up. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure we will. Because that's, again, another understanding about the industry, that they shoot 40, 50 pilots a year for a few of them to get picked up or whatever.
Oh, yeah, no.
So I was not expecting to get a phone call 2 weeks later saying, congratulations, the show's been picked up. And I was very excited at that point, saying, great, when do I report to set? And they're like, oh, well, we're not going to film you anymore. We just need you to come in and do voices. And that's when I learned the bittersweet lesson of I wasn't going to be on camera anymore. So I was a bit let down about that.
But still, I mean, sure, doing the voice was pretty cool though.
Yeah, I mean, the ADR studio that we worked in was the same ADR studio that was doing voice work for Star Trek: The Next Generation and stuff like that. So there were a number of times when I saw some of those actors, going in and out of that building, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in the same building," So I mean, it was very exciting that way, and it was kind of interesting to see how stuff was put together behind the scenes because even though I was not on set with any of the other actors, I was never at the juice bar, I was never in the park, or I was never even in the command center set. I never went there. So I got to see the raw footage of what they were working with, and then I would do voices over that. And I got to see how the show was being put together from behind the scenes. And at the time, Tony Oliver, who was the head writer of the show, I was really sort of like peppering him, and pestering him about writing. I wanted to write stories. I wanted to write for the show, and had submitted several ideas for the show. And he was very supportive and really liked some of the stuff that I was doing. And had I stayed out there, had I continued to work on the show, I probably would have ended up writing. Much like how Paul Schreier, Bulk, ended up directing episodes of the show. I probably would have found myself doing other things on the show rather than just doing the voice of Zordon. So,
Now, how long were you on the show for?
well, my face and the visage of Zordon is used in like 5 seasons, but I only provided the voice for the first 31 episodes. I left LA very shortly after the show went on the air. So all the stuff that we had been doing before the show aired was already in the can and was all ready to go and be on screen and whatever. So once I made the decision to leave Los Angeles, it was very easy to replace the voice of Zordon rather than just go back and refilm it or whatever. So again, a very harsh lesson about how everybody is replaceable and that kind of thing. So it was a very interesting experience. Yeah.
Yes. Now, you were talking about writing. I've noticed that you actually write your own book, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yes. I've written. Well, I self-published a superhero novel called Vigilance, and then over the last couple of years, I've been working with an independent publisher called Caffeine and Ink, and they are publishing my Lincoln Bright series of novels. Yeah.
Nice. Mind going into a little bit of detail about that, as well, with what you can share at least.
Sure. Well, the first 2 books are out. Glims is the first of the Lincoln Bright series, and Gaunts is the second book. And we are currently editing the 3rd book, Gifts, right now. Glims introduces us to a character by the name of Lincoln Bright. Lincoln Bright is an attuned. He can see and hear these entities that he calls glims. And they're ghost-like entities that are sometimes when the way he phrases it is that when everybody dies, everybody creates a glim. There is a momentary leftover part of us that imprints the moment that a person dies. Most people, that glim will recognize that they're not where they're supposed to be, that they are supposed to move on. So they dissipate very quickly. Sometimes in a few seconds, sometimes in a few moments. But there are those glims that stick. They are created out of trauma or great anger or great sorrow. And those glims that stick, they feed off of the negative energy around them, the different thoughts of people, and they are anchored to a specific individual in the world, somebody that is part of one of the reasons why they are here, why they are staying behind, why they're not moving on. And all of that negative energy, they turn into a gaunt, which is a negative sort of acidic space that begins to eat away at the fabric of reality. And the glims themselves will start to stitch holes in reality, trying to get through to a dimensional space on the other side where the dead live. The dead are these ravenous, ever hungry dimensional entities that are very eager to get to our reality so they can feed. And Lincoln is one of the people that fights against that kind of fit. It's his job to break gaunts and dissipate the glims before the dead can cross over.
Sounds like an interesting story.
There's an apocalyptic magical cult called the Hermetics that are working to support the dead, and so Lincoln has that to fight against as well.
Yes. What was the inspiration behind writing that book series?
It's really born out of an understanding that much like a good movie script, a good book needs to have a real hook to it. Something that will grab the reader's attention and make them want to read more. And so I was trying to think, I had written a number of short stories about, and they covered a wide range of different topics. I wrote steampunk, I wrote superheroes, and I was really getting into, I'm not really sure why, I think I was very sensitive to things that were happening in the world that seemed very dark and dire at the time, and still are. There are still a lot of dark and dire things that are happening in the world, and so I was
definitely.
Yeah, I was drawn to writing something paranormal or horrific. I wanted to take all of my worries and fears about all these dark and dire things that are happening in the world and sort of translate that to the page. How can I tell a story that will help me purge my anxiety and my fear about all these dark and dangerous things? And I had struck upon this idea about, I was a big fan of Kolchak, the Night Stalker. And my first initial idea was that, and I was also a big fan of Stephen King. I read so much of Stephen King when I was growing up. And I just really loved his writing style and his masterful craft of a grasp of character, how he can make just somebody off the street extremely interesting. I just love how he did that. And so I was really trying to mimic my idol, Stephen King, of telling a story about this very interesting character who deals with these manifestation of dark and dire things. And at the same time, and this is a very personal note, the first story that I wrote with Lincoln was published by a now defunct indie publisher. But the first story I wrote was called Buddy Holly in the Cold, Cold Ground, which Lincoln tells a story about how glims are created, and he tells the story about the Buddy Holly plane crash, about when the day the music died, and when Buddy died, his glim was, he was facing one of these entities coming to face him, and that was basically the premise of that story. And as I was writing it, I was very compelled. I could not put it down. I would work on it the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep. I was very obsessed with this idea and was very meticulous about trying to put it all together so that it made sense. And I didn't want to call it a ghost story. Again, I was looking for that hook. I was looking for something that would make it stand out in a crowd. And that's when I came up with the concept of glims and gaunts and that sort of thing. And in the middle of writing it, I immediately had this epiphany, this understanding that I wasn't just writing about ghosts and dark things. I was I was writing about my divorce. I was trying to purge those negative feelings that I had about that. And I had given the story to a close friend of mine, and I said, here, I wrote this, and I would like you to read it, but once you get through with it, let me know what you think it's about. And because my friend knew me well enough, he called me like a day or two later. He goes, "Oh, this is definitely about that old relationship." And I said, "Okay, good." Then I did my job. Then I wrote something that you could identify with, and that character stuck with me. And then I started to participate in the National Novel Writing Month program, which happens every November. Everybody all across the globe who participates in National Novel Writing Month tries their best to see if they can write 50,000 words in a month. And I thought, well, let me see if I can't write a whole Lincoln Bright novel in a month. And I started shopping it around, and luckily I had a friend, a Facebook friend, who had been publishing her own books through this company, and she introduced us, and I sent them my first few stories, and they loved it. And so we've been working together for the last 3 years or so.
Nice. Now, one more question before we end this interview. Any advice you'd like to give out there for those who are listening who are thinking about becoming a writer or wanting to get into acting?
The best advice I can give you is to do it. If you have aspirations for anything, whether it's acting, writing, being a biochemist or a physicist or whatever, you really have to sort of do it. When people ask me, how do I become a writer? Well, you write. You sit down, you start typing, you formulate an idea or concept, and it's like that song from the from the Rudolph Christmas special. You put one foot in front of the other, and you've got to walk that road. You've got to hoe those rows. You've got to work at it. So my best advice is, and again, it's not because you're trying to achieve some sort of success. It's not because you are trying to make a whole lot of money out of it. I mean, if you're doing these things, you're doing them because you're compelled to do them. You can't think of anything else that you would rather do than to tell stories in whatever form that you're thinking of. If that's where you are in your life, if you can't think of anything else, then you're sort of on the right track. And you don't listen to all those voices that say, well, you'll never make any money of that. It's like, well, that's not the point. If it is the point, then you're in the wrong business. I mean, at least that's my 2 cents on.
Oh no, I have to wholeheartedly agree on that. If it's all about the money, then you're again, like you said, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If you're doing it because you enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, there are a great many ways to make money.
Oh yeah, no.
If you want to get into the stock market, if you want to become a banking executive, that sort of thing. Those are the roads you want to do if you want to make money. If that's really the be all and end all of your business, then great, you do that. But success is a byproduct of what you do. It's not the end goal. The end goal is to tell good stories, is to inspire other people to tell good stories, to lift all of us up at some point, rather than sort of focus on all the dark and dire and negativity of life. We're all here to support one another. We're here to make each other better. And the best way we can do that is to, at least in my opinion, to share a part of our creativity, to to just inspire each other's. And that goes back to what's fascinating about Power Rangers, because Power Rangers was this show that was all about toys. To be honest, I mean,
no, you're not wrong.
it was a brilliant business strategy from Haim Saban, and because he knew that the show would be popular, because the day the show went on the air, the toys were already in the stores. Most of these other cartoons and TV shows like that, kids would watch those shows, but they would have to wait 6 months before Christmas came around and the toys would be in the stores because they weren't manufactured. Saban already had a deal with Bandai, and these toys were ready to go the moment that show hit the air.
Oh,
So the kids would watch the show. Half an hour later, they would have a Red Ranger in their hand, and they'd be, that was part of the lightning in the bottle.
Go to your local Toys R Us, and bam, you have like a Red Ranger or a Rita Repulsa figure or whoever at the time.
And that just infected. I mean, not to use it in a bad term.
Oh, no.
That was the infection that spread so fast because it was in your face every day.
Oh, yeah.
And but what's really great about Power Rangers is that it was a very positive force for a lot of people. It inspired them. It helped them. And one of my first experiences going to a convention was sitting up on stage and listening to stories of people who either came from broken homes or only had one parent because one of their parents had passed away or something like that. And listening to them tell me stories with tears in their eyes about how this show helped them get through their week because things were tough. They were bullied at school, but they could come home and they could watch this show about these friends that would help one another, and this big giant floating head that would tell them, you are good enough, I believe in you. And to me, that's the most surprising and wonderful thing about being attached with that property is you can forget about all of the cheapness about how it was made and the crappy contracts that people signed. What really matters is how it makes the people feel when they watch it, and knowing that there are folks your age or younger all across the globe who message me and say thank you for what you did. To me, that's really amazing and very humbling to be reminded on a daily basis that something I did one day almost 30 years ago still echoes outward and touches lives. And I'm very, very proud to be a part of that. And
no, again, thank you. We're definitely I have to say that. I think that should do it. Again, I hope first I hope this went well for you.
Oh yeah, it's fine. It was good.
Thank you. Again, David, thank you for coming on to Geeking Out to talk about, your story and letting people know out there who, will be listening to get to know you, the real you and everything. Again, I am Wayne the Unknown. Thank you all for listening to this special episode of Geeking Out. Until next time, thank you for listening and thank you for watching.